back to my channel. I'm Veronica with nurturingconnectionshomeschool.com, where you can find free printables, encouragement, and resources to help you connect with what matters most. Now, one of the resources that I have been putting together over the past about 3 to 4 years is my reading and writing curriculum. So what I'm talking to you about today is going to be Nurturing Connections in Reading Level A, which is my beginning reading curriculum. And so this particular curriculum is catered to our little ones. It includes all of the first pieces that need to be in place for them to learn to read effectively and to have that foundation strong and set for future reading and writing. Now, before I dive into all of that, I'm going to give you a flip through of the curriculum. I'm going to show it to you, kind of give you samples of all of that good stuff. But before I do that, I just wanted to share a little bit about my background in English language arts and reading and kind of give you my why for putting it all together. So feel free to skip this section if you're not interested, but I thought I'd share it for those who wanted a little bit more background information on the curriculum itself. Now, my background, before I was a homeschool mom, I was a public school educator. So I began in the year 2000. Gosh, it feels like such a long time ago. But 24 years ago, I started off as a middle school teacher. I was an 8th grade teacher and a 7th grade teacher, and I taught English language arts. And I did that for quite a few years. I worked with at-risk populations primarily, also children who were ESL or who had English as a second language. And so those were my populations. I dove all into trying to help these kids. My heart and passion was helping children learn to read and write effectively. After I did that, then I went on to work for an educational service center. It was a regional ESC. And basically I served as an educational specialist for English language arts and reading. So I served our region at that point. I did some traveling here and there all around the region and basically provided professional development to teachers. I provided technical assistance where I went in and taught model lessons, but ultimately I was in deep with all of the latest research, brain-based research on reading and writing and all of that good stuff. So after all that, fast forward, I had my son and he was very sickly that first year. So my husband and I decided that I needed to leave my job so that I could stay home with him. But I went ahead and started my own company with the intention of having this work opportunity where I could just work maybe 2 days a week, maybe 3, but ultimately be home with him the majority of the time. So I started Conceptual Literacy Corp. And at that point, I was offering the same types of services, but now I was private. So I could provide those services for districts anywhere basically. I started that off with just one district, and then from there it started to grow. I then was hired by another educational service center to oversee a curriculum writing project that ultimately ended up being used across the entire state of Texas with over 800 school districts participating. So this particular curriculum was for ELA and reading. I was overseeing primarily grades 6 through 12, but I was in charge of making sure that it all aligned all the way down to kindergarten. So I got this great big picture on curriculum writing and lesson writing and all of that, and I got to participate in that for a couple years, and it was such a neat project. I was invited to present at a state conference. And then from there, my business actually exploded. After that state conference, I got all sorts of requests across the state. I was traveling up to Waxahachie and Tyler and Baytown, down to Far or by McAllen and Ed Couch Elsa, and I was just all over. And that was when we realized that I needed to come home to homeschool our children. So the Lord put that on my heart. It was a very trying time for me. It was something that I had to personally navigate through of identity and work and home and all of that. I wrote about it in my blog if you're interested in all that backstory, but all that to say that when I started teaching my own children to read and write, I was challenged once again to kind of look at reading from that perspective, the one-on-one. I was studying all of the curriculums that were provided for homeschoolers and piecemealing things to make it work for my children. Now, in full disclosure, I have one child whom I just picked up one curriculum. I showed her the alphabet, and by age 2, she knew all her letters, she knew her sounds, and end of age 2, early age 3, she was already decoding CVC words. So she took off with it, and some children absolutely do that, and that is wonderful. But there are some children that require a little bit more support. What I have come to believe also in working with grades K through 12 is that all children can benefit from phonics as well. So keeping that in mind, even with that child who picked it up quickly, I have made sure to go back with phonics instruction. It has really provided that support for spelling later on, and just really equipped her in her educational journey in that sense. And with my other two, I started piecemealing things. I have a whole video on all the different curriculums I used during that time. It's called How I Taught My Children to Read. And so I'll link that below if you want to check it out. But I did have to do a lot of piecemealing, and it got to the point where I just realized, why don't I just write it myself? So I knew my child best. I knew that by this point it was my youngest, and we've come to find that she has dyslexia. So it made sense why she didn't want to learn to read, why it was hard for her. So I started creating these different activities for her. I found that if there was too much stuff on a page, it became very overwhelming. So I wanted them to be visually appealing. I wanted them to be hands-on because she likes to move and wiggle. And so engaging her different learning modalities, I found was extremely effective at helping her learn to read. So I created hands-on activities, I created flashcards for her, and that was where Nurturing Connections in Reading was born. That's where I started. She was the inspiration behind it all, and then my heart was just for all the other kids out there who could use that extra support. I searched high and low for a curriculum that did it all, or did all that we needed it to do to support her, and I wasn't able to find what we were looking for. So I created this. I'm going to share with you kind of the heart behind it, what it looks like, how it's set up, and hopefully be able to provide enough information for you so that you can determine if it could be a good fit for you and your family. Now, age-wise, this is geared toward ages about 3 through 6 years old. So it's going to be for the early learner who really wants to get started with learning their letters and sounds, to the struggling reader who may be 6 or even 7 or 8 years old and maybe has struggled with memorizing their letters or their letter sounds, or struggled with the decoding process. So that can go either way. I set up the curriculum to be level A, level B, level C, and it just builds gently one upon the other so that as they go through, they're building that strong foundation in reading and writing as well. If you choose to download this curriculum, it is available as a PDF file, but I am also going to be offering some printed copies from time to time, so you'll want to check that out if you want something that's already printed for you. But basically what you will get is a teacher's manual that looks like this. And in the teacher's manual, you'll have a little note from me along with a quick start guide to help you prepare all of your material. So it's just a checklist that tells you all the things you need. So to break that down for you, you will need to print all of the documents, which includes 3 activity booklets, the rhyme and coloring pages, along with flashcards, and then you can also print out the book list if you want it in a hard copy to look over. Then it also explains how to prepare those. So for example, these booklets, the activity booklets, you can choose to bind them, or they can be loose leaf and you just pull out 1 or 2 pages a day to work on with your child. Now for the flashcards, it is recommended that these are laminated. And so you will laminate them, you will cut them out, and you'll have them available for your child, ideally in a little baggie or a basket with a dry erase marker and an eraser. And this will allow them to easily get in there, practice their handwriting whenever they'd like. You can also pull out these cards and do some quick practices. We know what are the names of these letters, what are the sounds of these letters, and so forth. There are also some cards toward the back with words that they can practice reading and writing, and along with some activity cards that they'll be using, for example, that just have the rhyme like this, where they'll plug in different letters to make up different words as well. So that's ideal. If you don't have access to a laminator, you can plug these into a sheet protector of some sort, or use contact paper so that way they can read, or they can easily write on them and then erase them as needed. Then you'll be asked to have a school supply pouch, and so this would include pencils, crayons, glue sticks or glue, small scissors, washable markers, watercolor paints, do-a-dot markers are optional, and a little small brown bag or gift bag that they'll use to put in their letters and things like that. So having that pouch ready to go every day will be key, because they could just pick up their pouch, pick up their alphabet letters, which I'll talk about next, and take their little notebook and their little activity book, and they'll be ready to get started wherever you are. So you could take school out to the park if you wanted to, or at home, but you'll have everything you need bundled up. So school supply pouch will be important. Having a set of alphabet letters. So these could be magnetic letters or letter tiles. I personally used mine from Bananagrams, which I'll link below if you're interested. But I just took out the 26 letters, put them in a baggie like this, stuck this in our supply pouch, and then we were good to go every single day for whenever the activities called for letter tiles. So alphabet letters, a board and or salt trays. So a board could be a chalkboard, a dry erase board on the wall. It could be a mini dry erase board to practice on. It could be something like an LED board where they can practice their letters on here and easily erase them. There it is. It could be a piece of paper and a sheet protector if that's all you have access to. Another recommendation is a salt tray. So all you do is take the lid of a shoebox, put in a cup or two of salt, and give them a plastic spoon, and they can practice writing their letters in there as well. Books. Books are strongly, strongly recommended. Reading aloud to your child is one of the best gifts you can give them for encouraging their love of reading and helping them make those connections for future reading as they grow as well. So you can use any books that you'd like. I'm looking for this book list here. Any books if you're doing a unit study for science or for history or using a different curriculum. Every time you get the prompt that says read story, you can plug in whatever book you'd like to plug in. So read story, choose your book, and go from there. If you'd like books that are connected to the curriculum, I provided a book list as well. So this book list is tied into the visual cues that your children will be learning as they learn the alphabet. So for example, for the letter A, they will be using the visual cue of apples and apple trees. And so I selected visual cues for the visual learner that look and sound like the actual letters themselves. So as an example here, you have the letter A. They can trace it here. The apple tree looks like a capital letter A. And then the little apple that fell off the tree looks like a lowercase letter A. And then they have these learning boxes here to practice writing the letter themselves. The reason I chose boxes instead of lines is because a lot of children who are just learning to read and write don't have the fine motor skills necessary to write on lines accurately. So this allows them to practice and develop that skill before they move on. Another example here would be cookies, for example, and they would trace this letter C. The letter C makes a k sound like in cookie. And then they get to see that visual cue and trace over it, and then they can practice writing it as well. So each letter is introduced with a visual cue, and the book list is set up to connect to that. So for the letter A, for example, they will have two books that are recommended here that are that include apples and apple trees. So for example, how to make an apple pie and see the world. And it gives you a little description here so you can know what that book is about before you go look it up in your library or online store to determine if you want to purchase it as well. Letter C has books on cookies all the way through. So you have over 52 titles here. These are books that we have personally loved. They are wholesome books. They have diverse characters. They have children with special needs in here, characters with special needs, characters who are older, and so forth. So you'll get a good, rich exposure to good quality literature. So the book list is also included so that you can select books. Another recommendation is to select an ABC alphabet book that's a devotional of some sort. So you're connecting the curriculum to their spiritual growth as well. In the first version of this curriculum, we used Big Thoughts for Little People, ABCs to help you grow. but there are others out there, and I share a couple of examples you can pick from in the manual itself. And then finally, our letter building materials. And this is optional, but it's something fun that your kids can do, especially if they're kinesthetic. So for example, for the letter A, they can use apple seeds or apples where they actually build the letter A with those apple seeds. And if it's something that's not easily accessible, I created these little cutouts in the back that they can cut out and then place on paper to form each of the letters. So there's apples, for example. For the letter A, you have octagons for the letter O, but everything else are just things that you can find easily, like sunflower seeds or twigs or cookies that you can crumble up and use the crumbs to make a letter C or take a bite out of it, beans, macaroni, and so forth. So the lists are there by booklet so that you can prepare accordingly if you choose to do those activities. The next thing in the manual are the goals and objectives. So the goals of this curriculum is to teach your child the alphabetic principle. That means they're going to learn all of the letters, the capital letters and the lowercase letters and the letter sounds, which are your phonemes. And so they're doing that all in a connected way, using these visual cues, using handwriting practices, using the hands-on activities, and so that it's gentle, but it's effective. They're going to remember it more easily than if they just did capital letter A all the way through and all the capital letters, and then all the lowercase letters all the way through, and then all the phonemes all the way through. It can be very difficult to hang on to that information for some children if they don't have those connections and pegs to tie it back to integrate it. So that's done purposefully in there to help them accomplish that. They're also going to be practicing their handwriting skills. They're going to practice the fine motor skills with some cutting activities and gluing. And then they're also going to be practicing their phonics to decode CVC words. So these practices come every fourth lesson or so, where they're starting very slowly to connect the sounds to make the words. They're very gentle. They get to practice writing words, reading words with their flashcards, but it provides plenty of repetition, plenty of practice all the way through to help them develop that skill so that as they move on through the levels, they can easily decode more challenging words as well. Now, each of the activities is set up to include a daily review of some sort. So at the beginning, they're reading through they're singing through the alphabet song while you're pointing to the letters, so they're getting the sequence and just seeing the visual representations of the letters before they're introduced. And then all you do is read the directions. And so it literally just tells you what to say. You just read it easily from there. So you just read it out loud, trace the G's. What sound does the G make? So they're going to trace the G and they should say G. Use a do-a-dot marker to bubble in each of the bubbles with the letter G. So they're going to go ahead and bubble those in. Point to each G and say G, and it sound G. So they would say G, 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 G. Call out the sounds of each of the letters. So now they're going to review all of the rest of them. Practice writing the letter G on the flashcard that we just talked about, or on a chalkboard or salt tray. Read a story, and then do the letter G rhyme and coloring page. So simple activity there. The next one is a cut and paste page. The next one, they're actually building the words with their letter tiles, and each day is a little different. It's set up with novelty in mind, so some days are pasting, some days are cutting, some days are using watercolor paints and do-a-dot markers, doing a little maze of some sort, but each activity is set up to engage them and to help them learn effectively. So you also have activities on here on phonemic awareness where they are listening out for rhymes and they're learning how to hear those different word families and then read through them as well. There's different coloring activities. It is set up with all of it in there already. You don't have to piecemeal it. You don't have to find this activity and that. It's all built in. The repetition is built in, but in a fun way for the child to retain that information. And then after the activity page, there's always that reminder, like I had shared, to read a story. And like I shared, you can pick a book of your choosing or you can use one from the book list. After that, you'll see here it has a section on assessing your child's progress. So at the end of every single booklet, you will find some review activities for that particular booklet. They'll go back and review some of the games and activities. They'll go back and practice, matching the capitals with the lowercase. And then it gives you an assessment to give to the child. And so you will talk them through it. It's nothing hard. It's not a sit down and take a test type of activity. It's an oral one that you engage with your child. And then you get to track their progress. Did they learn all the letters in that particular booklet? Do they know all the names? And you'll track their progress here. Do they know all their sounds? And this gives you the information you need to then know if you need to repeat a little bit more, if you need to create a puzzle of some sort, or go download something very quickly for that one letter, that will further support that learning. But like I said, there's a ton of repetition already built into it. You just want to make sure that your child is learning along the way, and those assessments are provided at the end of each of the activity booklets. So there's no getting to the end and realizing, oh my goodness, they didn't catch this, they missed this part. You'll get to know all the way through. After the assessment sheets, there is a section called When Your Child Struggles. And so it gives you some additional tools that you can use if your child is struggling with learning their letters or their letter sounds or the decoding process. So it breaks it down by topic. If they're not understanding rhyme very well, these are some things you can do. If they're not learning their letters very well, the alphabetic principle, these are some things you can do, and so forth. So it guides you along. It helps to break it down for you. So if you know absolutely nothing about teaching reading, it takes you by the hand and shows you exactly how to do that in a way that helps your child. There's also a bookmark here provided for story questions that you can ask your child after story time that will help prepare them for oral narrations and later written narrations, and later, the analyses and so forth that they'll be writing. So it's step by step, line by line, precept by precept. As your child practices these things day in and day out, they're gaining those skills and growing in their abilities. So more cutouts, and then of course there is a certificate at the end for your child when they complete the entire curriculum. So that is how it is set up. Like I said, there are 3 booklets, books 1, 2, and 3. At the end of each one, your child has a little coloring page to encourage them. Oops, that's not it. Kind of congratulate them for their success. But I do want to share with you the last piece that I just added to this curriculum, which is the ABC rhyme and coloring pages. And so the heart behind nurturing connections in reading is to connect children with God first, family, and learning. And so this is why you're seeing all those connections and learning taking place at the same time. When the brain has that context, when it's integrated, it's better able to learn and retain that information over time. When learning happens in a safe and nurturing environment, it also allows for more learning to take place and for that retention of information. So these activities are all hands-on and set up to connect you with your child as they're learning to read and to create enjoyable memories that they can then integrate with their learning. And then the last piece was to connect them with God. So I did recommend some devotionals there, but then we also created this rhyme and coloring pages booklet to help you further with that piece. This booklet is set up with rhyming couplets, and so each page has the letters here for them to trace once again, and then it has a rhyming couplet that talks about what God made, because at the very beginning of a child's educational journey, what is at the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, is knowing who God is and what He's done. And so I made these rhyming couplets to remind us of all the amazing things in this world that He's created. Here we started off with God made apples and apple trees, God made ants and you and me. And so they get to draw themselves here. And it introduces them to a number of different animals, landforms, seasons, foods, insects, all of that's in here so that you can then take that, create a unit study if they're interested in learning about it. Bring in a pomegranate when you're reading up on the letter P and pomegranates and pansies. I have a number of different activities you can do with these rhyming pages, such as circling all the letter A's that you find in the rhyming couplet, circling the words that begin with A, searching for them here. So can you find the apples? Can you find the apple tree and the ants? And then it gets a little bit more complex as we're getting into different types of flowers like pansies and peppermint, and I think we have petunias in there. They can color this however they'd like, or you can then look them up on the internet or in a book and say, what color are pansies? What colors are apples? Let's look at some pictures. Let's pick those colors from the colored pencils here, and let's color ours like God made it too. And so you can connect it like that if you'd like, or not. It's totally up to you. There's ideas in here for things you can do. Other ideas include creating a background for the different objects or animals. So I kept this very simple on purpose. So here they could draw a background behind the bear or the bumblebee. They could draw a tree for the bird, but you're training them to start paying attention. You're training them to start noticing details and add details, and that is setting them up for the next step in their learning process. So I'm so happy with how this turned out. If you've already ordered Nurturing Connections in Reading, but you received the first edition without this, and if you'd like this, I'd be more than happy to send it to you. So please feel free to email me at nurturingconnectionshomeschool@gmail.com, and I will get the new and revised version to you as soon as possible. So just send me the order number, and I'll make sure that you get that as well. Also, if you already have a reading curriculum, but you're interested in maybe the flashcards that you'd like your child to practice, some book ideas with the book list, and the rhyme and coloring pages, this is a separate little add-on bundle that you can purchase separately. So I'll have that in my shop too. I also want to let you know that I have a playlist called Nurturing Connections in Reading, where I have older videos on the curriculum. But that is Nurturing Connections in Reading Level A. I am so happy about it. I hope it is something that can serve you and your families well if you are looking for a reading curriculum. Please let me know if you have any questions. Drop them below in the comments, and I'd be more than happy to address them. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this with a friend if you think that it can be helpful, and give me a thumbs up on your way out. I would greatly appreciate it. Hope to see you here next time. Bye-bye.